If you're a World of Warcraft Classic player, there is no way you have avoided the flood of content lately surrounding speculations and leaks regarding Classic Plus. Personally, I've been holding off making a video about it, mainly because I'm not a fan of speculations on the internet, but also because I'm not someone who focuses on making WoW content. If you have a look at my channel, there is like 90% other things and a little bit of WoW. As far as World of Warcraft goes, I am simply a massive fan that has been playing since 2004. However, the idea of Classic Plus is very dear to me. I was one of the delusional ones that did not want to go to TBC back in Classic 2019 because of the same reasons we want Classic Plus today. So this time around, I feel like it's just silly for me to not speak my mind and at least put my thoughts on paper and shoot it out on the internet. If people disagree, then at least I have got it out of my head, which I will consider a win in itself. So here it is, Murno's one-stop shop for Classic Plus. I will start with what Classic Plus is to me, followed by some conversation points and changes or not changes that are close to my heart, and lastly my bets on what I think will happen and my plan going forward if all the stars align. So what is Classic Plus to me? Classic Plus to me is the effort to have an evergreen version of vanilla World of Warcraft that keeps development going inside the vanilla framework. For me, it's important to call it vanilla. I will use Classic for the sake of this video, but otherwise I usually say vanilla because that's more clear on what type of design philosophy I like and what type of mindset I have going into this. I think Classic is such a broad term. There are so many versions of Classic, and now Classic could also be Mist of Pandaria, which is completely different. So vanilla to me is much more clear, and if you're familiar with what vanilla feels like, then you would be familiar with what type of design decisions I like. But yeah, so Classic Plus to me is not really vanilla reimagined. It's not retail in Azeroth only. It's not 21 new classes in a custom-built Frankenstein monster. In my head, Classic Plus is simple and delicate and respectful to the legacy without being scared to challenge the old ways. But we all know that when we're talking about Classic Plus, a lot of details are of course up to the implementation of it. A system can work or not work based on details on how it affects the world or different areas of the game. An example of this is the dual spec system, which I will touch on soon. But since there are so many ways to implement things and a system that is good in one way could be bad in another way, I've decided to make a few categories and just speak my mind on those categories. So in the end of it all, you will hopefully have a better understanding or a good understanding of what type of Classic Plus I would like to see. I will of course add all the segments with timestamps in the description, and with that, let's get into it. The first one is very cheesy and it has been brought up 1,000 times, but I still feel it's very important to start here, and that is that the world is the main character. To me, when I talk about vanilla WoW, I don't really see it as raiding is a core feature of the game, PvP as a core feature of the game, or gearing or whatever it could be. These are like sub-systems to me. The core and the heart and the soul of the game is the world, and this is important, and all the players inside it all at once. So if the world would be empty, then that's kind of bad, right? The world serves no purpose if it's empty. So you can't really say that it's only the world, but it's the world in relation to the player base as a whole. This means that when I'm talking about vanilla, I really think if we want to develop a Classic Plus or keep expanding on the vanilla world and the vanilla framework, it has to be from the perspective of a world over individual. Something can be inconvenient for an individual, yes. If we alleviate that inconvenience, could that negatively impact the world? Likely, yes. So it's important for me that we have this world over individual mindset. And this also ties into the dual spec that I mentioned before. I'm not a fan of when you can go out in the world and you can rip out your brain and put in a new brain, which is kind of how I see it when you change the spec. You'd say, I'm going to unlearn everything I've learned and learn something new that is more favorable for me right now. And then I will unlearn that and learn what I just unlearned again. That's like from an RPG perspective, from a world perspective, from a like ever breathing, living evergreen thing. I think that's kind of weird. So I would say this is also one of these things that the implementations is very important. If you're gonna have a dual spec in a Classic Plus, which is, they obviously will have it. If Classic Plus comes around, then obviously we're gonna have dual spec. But I think the question is, when can you change the talents? How often can you do it? Can you do it in cities, when you're rested? Can you do it out in the world? I think it's important to consider all of these questions, because if we allow people to change spec in the world or in the raid or in battlegrounds, you are kind of warping the world around you to your liking. And that is not a power a player should have. Right. Moving on to the second point in the world part that I just have close to my heart, and is world buffs. I love world buffs, and I know exactly why. It is because it makes people go out in the world. Now, are they completely busted, breaks the game, makes people feel bad when they lose them, and originally you could dispel them. That was also very bad, but it creates all of these world interactions. So when you're assessing world buffs for Classic Plus, you will kind of have to look at it also from this world over individual perspective. Should we remove them? I don't think so. Should we change how strong they are? Absolutely. Should we consider not stacking them? Absolutely. But if a player wants to do a quest and get the buff, and then do another quest extra powerful, or if you want to have your entire raid wait for the Onyxia to have an upper hand going into the raid, I think that's just awesome game design. I just think it's really, really cool. And removing that would be sad, in my opinion. It would be sad to see them go away. However, how they play into the current day and age of how we play the game and how people optimize things, I think they need to be toned down, or we need some smart idea to make sure that people are incentivized to go get them to prepare for the raid, but should not feel like, if I don't take this buff, my class don't function. Because that's kind of how warriors feel, right? If you play a warrior and you don't have world buffs, you feel like you're playing some like old arcade machine, and then you get all the world buffs and you're like this massive mech that just like slashes through everything. So from a power fantasy, awesome, but it's like, it's too crazy, right? So I think we need to embrace the world in world buffs, and maybe tone down the buffs in world buffs, if that makes sense. Right, so those are like my two closest to heart things that I think from a world system perspective. That's just how I view things and systems and how they play into the world. Obviously, there are so many more. I just don't want to touch on too many details. So I hope you understand where I'm coming from here. Moving on to the new content cadence, and horizontal progressions. Big words, all right. Obviously, we need new content. What I want to talk about in this segment is not really should we have new content or not, or should we have Cadance, should we have Grim Battle, whatever, like all of these things that, yes, we should have it all. However, when should we have it? Because I think we should launch in a very close to vanilla state, and then slowly work towards fleshing out vanilla. Sprinkle some class tuning, of course, like if we want to alleviate the mana problems from Unkin, or alleviate something regarding buffs and for Shadow Priest, or maybe some Hunter Spec, I don't know. Sure, I don't really mind if we do that. If we have that, I don't mind. But the feeling when I step into Classic Plus, I want to feel the same thing as I feel when I step into vanilla. And when I get new content in Classic Plus, I want it to feel like I got new content in vanilla. So that's kind of how I see it. This also means that I think Blizzard should have a look at how they provide new content to us. Because in general, I think vanilla should be played from a self-imposed content perspective. You should just log in and enjoy the world. You should not require Blizzard to give you content to do, if that makes sense. I'm not a fan of daily quests. I'm not a fan of like, oh, we need a new raid because I'm now fully bissed out. I have all this gear, so now I need a new raid to feel incentivized to log in. Either you log off then, and that's perfectly fine, or you log in because you love the world or the community you're with, or you just want to like go out in the world, collect herbs, do some world PvP. Maybe you try to solo something you haven't soloed before, stuff like that. So like self-imposed challenges and content. I think the vanilla world is very, very well suited for that. But when they do add content, I think they need to look at the whole world, like from the new players that just started out, the people that are starting their new character today, and the people that are in your game that have been playing it since launch, and everything in between. And then you ask the question, how do we serve all of these people? And sometimes you maybe do a little bit sprinkling of content for the levelers, and then you sprinkle something on the end gamers, and then you do a little bit of both at the same time, depending on how big your patch is. But the idea here I have is that we should really avoid saying, here's the next patch, and we put that at the end of the game. So now we have expanded the game like forward. We put like something at the end of the game. So like you have Molten Core, then you add Blackwing Lair, or maybe you add a zone only for the end gamers. If you are in your leveling journey, you should feel like there could be a new quest coming up in the next zone you're in, just as much as I would expect it as a level 60 character. So that's just my perception of it. I think it's really important to let everyone in the world feel like their world is alive, not only the ones that have reached endgame. An example I have on this, just like on top of my head, is the Night Elves that are patrolling Barrens. I'm pretty sure that they drop like a quest starter item or something like that, but they are very you interact with them. They are just patrolling. When you want to, you interact with them. They are not really interacting with the world. They are just going there and waiting for you to interact with them. But let's say you start off and they are doing that, and eventually sometime Blizzard patches the zone. These Night Elves have changed directive. They have got a new intel or whatever they're doing. So now they have started patrolling a new area, or they will at 5 p.m. every day, they will actually attack Crossroads or something like that. This is sort of like the update I'm talking about. It's not big. It's not, it's a new patch. It's more like, yeah, the world is actually alive, and soon these Night Elves will be sick of just patrolling. They will actually do something now. And I think those are the types of updates that will breathe life into the world here and there, and eventually make the game feel so much more alive and big and massive, like we remember it when we were kids, but more adapted to a modern design. Regarding horizontal progression, I think World of Warcraft by design is quite vertical, but there are ways to mitigate it in healthy ways. And one way to do that is to consider what you are progressing. So how I usually view vanilla is that vanilla actually is quite horizontal, because you are progressing your character sheet, and your character sheet becomes finalized at the end of the game. You get stuff for your character sheet that you will have through the entire game, and that makes it so that when new content comes out, it is placed next to the previous content horizontally, but you take vertical leaps inside of that. Maybe I can show you. So the way I see vanilla's horizontal progression works, it's not actually horizontal, but this is kind of how I see it. Here are the 4 raid tiers. This is Molten Core, this is Blackwing Lair, this is AQ, and this is Nax. When we go to Molten Core, this is the item level cap. Oh yeah, hang on. So maybe the item level cap here, here, and here. So they obviously become like higher item level caps. But a character doing Molten Core doesn't really reach this point, because they are using gear from like the leveling pattern, like all of this time. They're using the gear from the leveling over here. So we're going into Molten Core, we get the gear we want from Molten Core, and then you're like here. And then you get the items you want from Black Moon Lair, then you're like here. And then you get the items you want from AQ, then you're like here. And then you get the items you want from Next, then you're like here. So due to you are always using things from the previous raid tiers in different situations, it means that you are progressing your character in a more horizontal path than a vertical path. So in my head, when we're adding content in here, let's say we add a new raid tier here, you would kind of go here. The problem with this is that eventually you will end up here, up here, somewhere. And Blizzard's job, in my opinion, here is to make sure that in vanilla, you have this block. How can we add this part without removing this part? And when we do, how wide can we go without people saying this content is redundant? Let's remove this one because this is just bloat. So that's what I consider the main challenge. How can we make the horizontal block as wide as possible? Because I don't think the vertical curve will go anywhere. We just need to make sure to stagger it somehow. Moving on to races and classes, I'm obviously a boomer here. When Classic Plus comes out, I don't want any changes whatsoever. What I would say is that I would be fine with some minor race class combinations. I would absolutely want to keep Shamans on the Horde and Paladins on the Alliance. I think that's a fundamental part of vanilla, and I think it should stay that way. I would even go further and say if they add a new race, let's say we get the High Elves and we get the Blood Elves or we get the Ogres or what have you. I think Ogres look really stupid, but that's just my preference. But if we add a new race, I would love if that race also comes with a new class that is exclusive to that faction. But the idea is that I want the factions to feel like factions, and they have their own stories and they have their own way of pursuing like warfare, and they have their ways, their cultures. So I just think it's really nice when the factions are different. I think it's a flavor of the vanilla that I really like. On the topic of self-imposed content, I also really don't want anything that has to do with rated content, rated dueling, rated arenas, rated speedrunning, rated what have you, Mythic Plus. I like when we are designing an MMORPG in the design philosophy that I want, then I don't think the game should provide like leaderboards and ways for people to compete. I think that's the community's job. Because when we look at how the speedrunning community started, they started challenging each other on private servers, and that just blew out of proportion, and now people are actually going for time over at Warcraft logs. I also think Warcraft logs started like that, right? They just started logging to see what is actually going on in the fight, and then they added like parsing so you could see I'm doing the most damage in my server and whatnot. And that's sort of like the initiatives that the community is creating to have these self-imposed challenges and self-imposed content. Same goes with hardcore. When someone just asked, hey, I want to play vanilla and I don't want to die. And then they kind of just grew from there. And I think that's really cool when these communities are coming together. But if Blizzard is providing us the frameworks for those activities, they tend to both be worse, let's be honest, but also they kind of goes against the spirit of the game, because the game is not here to provide you with activities. The game is here to provide you with the world, and you are going into the world and seeing, okay, this world includes this thing and I want to go do that. Does that make sense? Maybe not. All right, it's okay. It's okay. Moving on to realms, realm types, and layers. I think this will be quite quick. I want all the realm types that we usually had, like RP, PvP, PvE, and PvP realms. I don't think I'm missing any realm there. I also don't think we should have mega servers. I think mega servers are really bad for the game. They just stab the world in the back and say, hey, you are now exactly the same all the time. So there's no feeling of when people are logging in and people are logging out. And the whole economy gets screwed up because everyone is farming herbs all the time. There's just no like ups and downs in the server. If you imagine like a wavelength, and the ups is like when people have time to play and the downs is when everyone is sleeping, you as a player should have the agency to pinpoint the downs, like and go, okay, now everyone is sleeping, so I'm gonna go farm Black Lotus. That's like a perfect design. I love it. And I think we should embrace that design instead of just pushing all the players into the same realm. Then that up and down wavelength just becomes flat. I obviously don't want layers. You would have guessed it. All good. I think the world that I walk on should be the same world as you walk on. Shouldn't be able to teleport around and abuse the layer system, and we shouldn't be able to like, oh no, someone is farming my flowers, so I need to layer over to a layer where no one is farming my flowers. That's just too much power for a player to have in an MMORPG. And the last point I have is raid sizes. Oh, that's spicy. Right, raid sizes. 40 man, let's go. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, I think this is quite a big topic because raid sizes is so... It really depends on what content it is. I love how Vanilla do it right now, where the raid size is it's kind of tied to what you're fighting. So let's say you are an adventurer and you want to pick up 4 friends and do a dungeon. That sounds about right. It wouldn't make sense to have like 40 people and go into dead mines. That sounds more of an adventure for 5 guys trying to infiltrate the bad guy and see if they can like be lucky and get out with some loot, you know? And then you have the 10 mans, the UBRS. And this also makes sense because it's general Drakisat. It's like you are going up against a big guy, but it's not really the same as like Ragnaros, you know? So it's a mini raid. It's supposed to be memorable because you're many, because it's a big task, but it's not like the end of the world big. So it kind of makes sense. And then you have the Solgruben AQ20. Also makes sense that they are like in between because it's big monsters. You go for Hakar. So in my opinion, raid sizes are important for RP. When you're fighting Ragnaros or when you're fighting Cthulhu, it would not make sense to run in with 10 guys. It's like if you're running in with 5 guys against Van Cleef, it does not make sense to run in with 10 guys or even 15 or 20 against Cthulhu. 40 feels better from that perspective. Sure, I can see that getting 40 people is a headache. I've been there, I've done it. It's not like super fun, but it's sort of like a friction that is required here for people to feel immersed in the challenge they are about to go on. And I think right now we think it's not as important because we have done the classic content 2,000 times. But imagine if they drop Uldum and you're going up against this massive giant and you only have to bring 9 friends. What? Is this even a challenge? And I think like from this RP perspective, I think it just makes sense to keep using 40. Yeah, getting 40 people together can be cumbersome and can take a lot of time. And when you're there, you're like, it takes so much time. But removing that friction, I think, is a worse idea. So yeah, that's just my opinion. Moving on to my bets. Let's put it like this. The chance of anyone being 100% satisfied at launch of whatever this project ends up being is pretty much 0. But you have to bet on something, right? Considering the leaked release window is right before a Wrath Anniversary release. And the codename Camelot, either referring to King Arthur or Dark Age of Camelot, I bet, at least, that this older design philosophy is the guiding light for Classic Plus. I place my bet on a very down-to-earth version, very similar to Vanilla, with a long road into the future with small changes one at a time, making a home for Vanilla players once again. Who knows, in 3 years we might have new classes, new races, new abilities, but that's something that should be added with a huge amount of care, not abundance and just shake things up for the sake of it. I've said this for quite a while, that I'm not going to play WoW as my primary MMO again until Blizzard releases an official Classic Plus server. But if Classic Plus ends up being even remotely close to what I've touched on earlier in this video, I think it's time to go again and get lost in Azeroth. If I feel a very strong hype, then I'll probably even make my own guild and try to contribute to the game and communities as much as I can. If this ends up happening, there will likely be a lot more WoW content going forward. If Classic Plus simply goes a route that is not for me, then all good, genuinely. That just means that it probably is someone else's favorite version, and that's of course incredible for them. I will still probably have plenty of indie games to play instead. Thank you so much for watching this video. I know it was a long one, so if you're still here, thank you so much. It means the world to me. I stream weekly over at twitch.tv/mernotv. Not that much WoW right now, but who knows, that might change. So make sure to like and subscribe if you like what I do, and we'll stay in touch. Have a great day. Bye.